Hello and welcome to DDOCast episode 561, recorded not live for the weekend.
They don't need to know that.
Well, someone might be looking for it. Anyways, I'm your host, Patrick. With me this week is Arkat. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Patrick.
Wake up.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this is not live. Just things, schedules, busy. Yay. What we got a lot to talk about, so we're gonna jump right in. Madeline wishes her brothers and sisters, family, and friends a happy Pride in the 418th screenshot of the week. Thanks for sending in this screenshot. I think this is the veil, but I don't ever remember seeing a rainbow.
No, I was thinking it might be in Shroud, but the veil is also probably a good, good guess. Yeah, I can't figure out how the rainbow. Oh, maybe rainbow in the dark, maybe around
There's
there.
not a maybe. I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm thinking maybe some cheater changing of graphics. Although, is that cheating?
Some shenanigans.
Yeah, maybe. But it's a nice screenshot. Well done.
Oh yeah.
We like to talk about Dungeons & Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can catch us through Twitch, YouTube, the DDO forums, iTunes, or from our website, DDOcast.com. You can also check out our calendar there and usually keep track of things when it is not Prime Umpire season. Yay! Tournament. Anyways, DDOcast is hosted by Cyber Ears, the awesome podcast hosting network. Shows are usually available within a few days of recording. The next show will hopefully be next weekend. Next weekend. And anyways, you can stay updated by following us on our social media pages or our website. It doesn't get any less.
That's only a few days away, Patrick.
Yeah, shush. I'm only going to be at a baseball field for probably 30 hours this weekend.
Yeah, you're slacker.
On the podcast this week, we'll have part 2 out of 4 of our Masterminds of Sharn review, which, if memory serves, you were there for that. A lot of fun.
I was.
It was a good discussion. We had a lot of fun with that. And there's some community news, usual stuff, but game news. So, yeah, let's jump into game news, because there is, on one hand, not very much, and on the other hand, a metric ton. There's really one thing of news, but it's a big thing of news. Epic Destinies. We're going to be taking a look at what they're planning on doing for changes for that, which is not insignificant. Now, kind of go through this, try to go through it somewhat quickly. We'll link to all of these. There's 5 threads. We'll link to all of them in our show notes so you can look at these for yourself. There is a lot of stuff. I'm going to try to boil some of it down a little, so I may not be reading every single point. And we'll kind of take it in chunks and then kind of give our feedback on it. That's kind of the plan. First thing, new Epic Past Lives. The effective change is that you have a 4th choice of Epic Past Lives in each sphere. Like the other set of Epic Past Lives, they go up to 3 stacks. The passives are unlikely to change. They're the exact same as all the other ones, which is why they're not likely to change. He's just giving Steel Star is just giving them to us to complete the picture. At this time, they're not planning on changing Epic Completionist or adding a higher end one. If you are unfamiliar with this, Epic Completionist is you have to get 3 past lives out of each sphere. You don't have to get them all, just 3 out of each, and then you get an extra twist slot. That's also why they said they're not looking at a higher end one at this point in time. Although that would be kind of interesting as a little rabbit trail, an extra, or something else as the next tier of Epic Completionist, improved Epic Completionist, I guess. I don't know.
I guess for those extra 12 past lives, they better give you something.
Maybe it'd be like halfway there, or like have 3 of them. I don't know. Anyways, remember, you get to toggle 1 at a time per sphere, which is not changing. Please note that two-handed fighting style does not include natural weapon fighting style, which I assume will kind of translate through most of these things because there's a lot of stuff that'll kind of catch with two-handed fighting style. Arcane Sphere. The stance is +3 MRR per stack of this past life, so you get a stance that has +9 MRR. Kind of nice. And then it has the absorption of energy as the passive. The Divine Sphere is +5 positive, negative, and repair healing amplification per stack. Note that this does not allow you to benefit from negative or repair healing if you do not normally do so. And then the Martial Sphere is +2 to Tactics DCs and +1 to Assassinate DCs per stack of this past life. And the Primal Sphere is +2 to attack per stack of the past life. If you are fighting in two-handed fighting style, you also gain +2 damage per stack of this past life. So that's what we got going on here. This will kind of be a theme later when we get into some of the other ones, but my hot take here is they're trying to provide more options for a wider variety of builds. Some of the past lives are not super enticing for a lot of people. Thinking maybe the skills bonus. Or like if you're a caster, what do you want out of the martial tree? You probably still don't want anything out of the martial tree. But melee, what do you want out of the arcane sphere? This provides at least other options.
Well, and all those passives are pretty much all useful. So, it isn't like there's nothing there for folks.
And reading behind the lines, as it were, let's just say that and agree that, or at least posit that reincarnation is one of the big money makers for SSG. So
I never would have guessed.
Stands to reason they want us, more options to reincarnate. Helps their bottom line.
More opportunities to spend money.
Yeah, I mean.
Oh, that's fine. They're a company. They're entitled to try to make a profit.
That's their job, right? Is to entice us to spend money. That
Absolutely.
Like I said, the passives here are not insignificant either. I mean, you're looking at now being able to get up to plus 12% absorption on acid, cold, fire, and electric. That's significant. Plus, math. What would that be? +3 times 12, 36 PRR for the divine. I mean, that's not insignificant. Right. I'm not even gonna try to do the hit points and AC off the top of my head.
Stuff.
But there's some significant power there. So, I think we all liked it. This is great. Like, you don't lose epic completionists by adding these things. The OCD completionists go have fun. We'll be coming
plenty of them.
Yeah. And them. The other part of that too, though, people doing past lives helps other people do that are farther behind in that chain, as it were, right? 'Cause they have more people to run with. It's great.
Well, absolutely, yeah. There'll be a lot of people starting off at level 20, and getting through those early epic levels is sometimes a pain in the ass. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, now we're gonna get into the spheres, and this is where we'll get a little bit more controversial. And we'll start off with one of the funnest ones. Or do you want to wait on this one?
I'm going to go off on this.
So if we
move Martial Sphere to the end.
The end? Okay, we can do that. No problem. So we'll start with the Arcane Sphere. So there's a kind of a preamble for all of them. I'm only going to read it once. So this is what Steelstar said. This is an early look at the Epic Destiny Pass currently slated for Update 43. As a side note, when is Update 43? Not for a while. This is a pretty early, like I said, it's an early look. They haven't released the second raid in Sharn yet. That's going to come first. We know they have said that there will be we will see that on Lamania before it goes to live. So this is not coming anytime soon. I would guess at the end of summer at the earliest. If not...
Really? That far?
I would say at least that. It's a guess.
Okay.
Well, I think they said Update 43 is going to have more Sharn content.
Okay.
I think that's what they said. And then 44...
That sounds right.
44, I think, would then kind of be Night Reveille time frame. Which would kind of be end of October, early November timeframe usually, and then maybe 45 kind of December, maybe
early next year kind of
Probably
thing.
early next year is probably more likely when it's going to be, depending on what's
Yeah,
coming. So
probably they'll get it out in time for the anniversary, maybe.
probably, yeah. But so I'm kind of, if I remember correctly, I'm thinking probably end of summer ish.
Okay.
Kind of guess. And as I said, the second Shard rain is coming, so there's still a bit of time before this even reaches the mania. A few notes about this pass before we get into the details. They have a few primary goals in the Epic Destiny Pass, compounded by a very slim time frame of 3 weeks for principal changes. Oof. First and foremost, try to put each Destiny in a place where it's worth using for at least some build. Emphasis on some. Some people took this and ran with it and were like, you're trying to make this use each Destiny usable for all builds. No,
Yeah,
some
generic.
builds.
Yeah.
Not everybody.
Yeah.
Some builds. 2, fix bugs and remove things that hinder fun or usability. You'll notice that every epic moment that required you to do weird things to charge it up no longer requires that. And we'll kind of come back to that a little bit. Although I think part of the reason why they're taking that away, not only is it kind of a pain to do and deal with, but I don't think it ever worked right. Because a lot of these, you'd charge it once and then it would always work whenever it came off timer. And I don't think that was the intent. I think the intent was actually like you had to charge it up every single time.
Sure.
So they took that out. So I think that's part of a bug thing. But also, yes, it hinders fun and usability. 3, improve the ability for people to play in Destinies that match their archetype, like range characters in Sharadi, without significantly hindering the current ability for people to play in Destinies that don't. Casters in Sharadi, for example. Like he said above, the time frame was slim. They didn't hit everything they would have liked to, and there are still abilities within individual Destinies that still probably aren't worth taking. They're listening for feedback, but the ability to act on it is similarly time restricted. They're unlikely to further revamp whole trees or add completely new skills at this time, but they may be able to make a number of tweaks and fix outstanding bugs. They did add, they were looking at adding something, I think, to Primal, or not Primal Avatar, the Fury of the Wild. I think that was the one it was, but they were somewhat vague on it and stuff like that. But, so those are kind of the goals. So let's stop there for a minute, a hot second.
Okay. Yeah, I got a thing about the goal. But go ahead.
Why don't you go for it?
Okay. Well, it seemed like they went out of the way to point out that the that like your example of Caster and Sharadi, for example. Obviously, you want Sharadi to be useful for range characters, but I think it's misguided to try to make Sharadi more useful to characters who are not going to stay in Sharadi. If you look at all the epic past lives, now we can do 48 instead of 36.
Mm-hmm.
The percentage of time any particular tune is going to spend in any one particular destiny that's not not going to be their end one or the one that they particularly like for their current build is comparatively speaking, it's going to be practically nil. So so they have to go through. So a caster has to go through Sharadi one time to max out the destiny and get the number of fate points. To maximize the number of fate points, and then they're never going to go into Sharadi again. So who cares? I mean, it's 1.9 million experience, and of 8.4. What is it to go from 20 to 8.2? Right, 8,250,000. So you got to do that 48 times. Sorry, 1.9 million is not that big a deal. So
a lot of casters like
think it's
Sharadi because you get all the rainbow effects. It's a less popular build these days.
Sure, but it's a okay. So maybe a wizard is a bad choice. Okay, so a two-handed fighter with using great swords. There's not much in Sharadi for them to do. So
and again, I don't think they're trying to say that they're trying to give someone like that something to do. I think what they're trying to say is we want each destiny to be worthwhile for somebody to take.
Sure.
Because, I mean, let's face it, Magister, not a popular destiny. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Two, they don't want to quote significantly hinder the current ability for people to play in Destinies that aren't quote their archetype.
Okay, so two-handed fighter and Shirati.
But I don't think, but they're not really changing anything in that regard. As opposed to they're probably not going to be in there in the first place, and that would go back to the some builds part, right? Like, but
Okay.
Shirati is a popular option in the primal sphere for casters because of all the procs they get off of
Yeah,
magic
magic missile
missile and stuff like
casters
that.
for sure.
So,
Magic missile casters for sure.
So there's, I think that's kind of what they're going for. They're not trying to make it usable for every build, every archetype, to use every tree kind of, every destiny kind of a thing. But I think the goals here are good. I think some of them are more achieved than others, shall we say? But I think they did I think do a pretty good job for improving destinies to be used outside of some of them. They made them more usable as a whole. I think that's kind of where I land on the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that's probably accurate to a large extent, Patrick. But and Linabelle had asked a question on one of the threads. It
Oh,
was
I know
it
what I'm
was in
talking about.
the in everything is nothing thread, one of the everything is nothing threads, and a couple of monk players, obviously monk players, including myself, pointed out that Grandmaster of Flowers should be primarily a monk destiny, and she replied back, should it, as I
Mm-hmm.
think she's thinking that that Grandmaster of Flowers should be useful to more than just monks, and uh,
Wasn't the question, or wasn't the answer, or what she was answering to the idea that shouldn't Grandmaster of Flowers be the best monk destiny, or was it? I don't quite remember what.
that you might be right. You might be right.
And
That you might be.
I don't know that she did a great job of kind of getting across what she wanted to, but she was asking people to kind of debate that a little bit, as
Mhm.
opposed to, like, she wasn't trying to be coy or quip. She was legitimately trying to
She
ask,
was definitely
should it?
trying. She was definitely trying to elicit
Yeah,
feedback and discussion
yeah,
for sure. But I am not sure that that was the destiny to to try to bring out your point. I mean, the now
well, it's
if you
one
know
of the ones
anything
being
about
hotly
first
discussed.
edition, if you know anything about first edition AD&D, you know that Grandmaster of Flowers is the 15th level title of the optional monk class in the player's handbook. Grandmaster of Flowers was the monk, was the highest level of monk you could possibly be way back when, and it's been
Mhm.
historically been, a monk thing, if you will. And yes, Grandmaster of Flowers should be the best destiny for hand wrap monks, and no
Okay,
question, no
interesting.
question. So
I don't disagree with you. I don't think it currently is, but
legend,
I think this.
everybody's in Legendary
Yeah.
Dreadnought. Yeah, well,
Well,
yes,
let's
because
come back to Grandmaster of Flowers.
sure,
We'll be there for a while. Let's do some easy ones, shall we? Let's come
sure,
back to
I'm
the
up for
arcane
easy.
sphere. We'll
Okay.
talk about Magister. So big picture for Magister. The tree had quite a few neat things, but it didn't do the one thing it was supposed to do: be the king of DC casting. Twisting Magister's bonuses and going into other trees where you got relevant ability score increases provided a better bonus
Hmm.
than this tree, and only that's not fun, and we'd rather see dedicated DC casters live here and get cool abilities with their DCs. Um, we focused on that goal and made a few of their other ability spice to go with it. The sigils still aren't good. They fell a bit low on the priority list relative to other things. If there are simpler number tweaks, they can make them more worth using. They're all ears. So, sigils kind of out of the conversation. They didn't have time to look at those. I will say that it seemed, my interpretation of this is not to say that DC casters can't live in other places, but they're recognizing a thing of DC casters don't live in Magister. I think Exalted Angel seems to be a much more popular choice these
Even
days.
for Pale Masters, I mean, my Pale Master's been in Magister, pretty
My
much
Pale Master
forever.
lived
But
mostly in Sharati,
okay.
mostly because I stink at doing DC casting, and the procs that we're talking about were more useful to me than what I could get out of Magister. So maybe that's part of why I stink at DC casting. I don't know. Anyways, so what's going on here? They're adding +1 to all spell DCs to each core in addition to what those cores were already doing. So that's
Right.
+5 DC right off the bat. Imperceptible casting now adds 10 universal spell power while active, and Fade in the Weave adds +25. They unlinked variable resistance from the Sigil of Energy negation. Master of Spell School also increased DCs for that school by an additional 1, 2, 3. Yeehaw, because I twist
Yeah,
out on a
that's
lot of
nice.
characters.
Absolutely.
So we're already up to +8 from what this tree, +8 DCs from what this tree already gives. And yes, they ran the numbers, and yes, they're okay with this. I'm a little shocked by that revelation, but yeehaw.
Yeah, I'm a little skeptical about that.
Well, they do keep raising the DCs and everything, so you know. Arcane Tempest now has a 30-second cooldown and a 10-second duration and 30 spell points. It's no longer linked to battle signal of battering spellcraft and is only one action point. And can use Quicken, Maximize, Empower, and Intensify Magics. Has a faster casting animation and no longer has a previously unlisted saving throw. Oops. Arcane Adept now costs 1 action point. They removed they put this in twice. They removed the saving throw. Yeah, it's a DC tree, but we wanted it to be good no matter what school you were in. Fair enough. Arcane Spell Surge now has a 1-minute cooldown, and Null Magic R no longer requires charging and has a 4-minute cooldown. This one seems pretty good. You know, I've already heard some of our gillies that are DC casters are already talking about going into this tree.
I'm sure they're salivating for sure.
some
No, my
extra...
Pale Master is going to stay in and have to probably respend his action points as well because I'm definitely going to get all those DC increases. So
I am positive that everyone is going to have to redo every single tree for their points. Like that's going to happen.
Oh, they're making enough changes for sure.
Yeah, they're going to reset everyone's points on all these. Yay. Yeah, no, I think this is good. I'm going to be interested to see how many people actually jump into Magister, to be honest, because you can twist the spell school part.
Oh, sure.
So you're really just looking at +5 to all spell DCs to the core. Exalted Angel has +3 in one of its cores, I believe, if I remember correctly. So there's that aspect to it, and personally, I think Exalted Angel is more utilitarian than Magister. But I think we will see more people in Magister. So, Draconic Incarnation, yeah. This is another tree that has good things, but it's hampered by its restrictiveness. It's meant to be the king of elemental nuking, but the lack of metas and scaling DCs made that hard. It also didn't get that much extra spell damage relative to other destinies, which was weird. They fixed a lot of that.
Considering it's a nuking destiny,
Yeah,
I can't really nuke as well.
Yeah. Each core now adds 5% spell critical damage in addition to what it already does. It's critical damage. So which is, I believe, pretty rare. I don't think you get a lot of spell critical damage from a lot of places.
Items, I think, probably would be the best place.
Critical chance, mostly. Right?
You might be right.
Go out with a bang, energy burst, energy vortex now apply meta magics. The acid versions of everything in here is now conjuration DCs.
Like it should.
Always seemed a little... It should be lore-wise, but it always seemed weird to me that acid was conjuration as everything else was evocation.
It's all Mel's acid arrow. I mean, that's always been the prime conjuration acid spell.
These spells should now be considered part of their elements for the purposes of cash level increases, other than the Savant's cash level increases, which were already working. Cool. All those abilities now also use the correct spell school as part of their DC calculation. Flyby attack uses evocation. Again, acid is conjuration. Dragon Breath no longer uses charges. Cool. It had
Good.
5. now, now it has a 25-second cooldown. Oh my!
That's good. That's fine.
That's
I'll
a
be using
lot
that
of
a lot.
yeah. No kidding. They're now considered part of their spell school for the person's cash level, max cash level, yada yada yada. Evocation, conjuration is part of the DC. Black Dragon Breath is now a conjuration spell. Draconic Fury's cooldown is reduced to a minute. The Hunger's temporary hit points and spell points are now 10 times your epic level. I believe that is higher. Fearsome Invulnerability no longer needs to be charged. It no longer says it does an Intimidate effect on account of that functionality never being implemented ever. Oops. It now also adds plus 30 PRR, MRR, and MRR cap for the duration. Cool.
That's nice.
And it has a 4-minute cooldown, so yay. Energy Vortex, Draconic Hunger, and Fearsome Invulnerability now cost 1 action point. They'll reduce the cost there. Yeah. As a bonus, Dragonborn Racial Tree, the Dragonborn Breath SLAs have always kept some parity with Draconic Incarnation, so they made some changes for it to gel. For the Racial Dragon Breath, Black Dragon Breath is Conjuration. Breath attacks now scale with 100% spell power. I think it was 15, which puts them on the standard spell damage progression they made after the skill. And Dragonborn's True Power Enhancement now adds Conjuration DC in addition to its Evocation DC. So,
Ooh, nice,
yeah.
nice. So the lesson here is everybody play Black Dragon Sorcerer, and that does acid stuff, and load up on your Conjuration spell power.
All right, you can be Conjuration DC. Sure.
Well, yeah, and that and the breath weapon scales with your spell power. So you want to, if you're going to do a lot of breathing, you want that too.
Yeah. I think this one's a win all the way around. It seems pretty nice.
I don't see any drawbacks with this. I like this.
That's true for I think most of the trees. Fate Singer. Oh boy, hold on.
Oh boy, here we go.
All right. The lead in for this one. What a weird tree. Fate Singer had a lot of fundamental issues that could only be solved by getting rid of the abilities entirely. They basically threw a lot of it out, and Linabelle built a new one.
Yeah, you know what? And she posted in on one of the threads about Fate Singer, and like half the abilities never worked like they were supposed to, kind of thing. And I'll be honest with you, I've been playing this game a long time. I never knew that Fate Singer was that messed up. Now, granted, I don't really have many tunes that use it, but that took me by surprise a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't know it. I mean, this is the tree that all of my melees are in if I needed to do that kind of a destiny, right? I need to get XP in that sphere, so.
Sure.
So they listed this out like completely brand new because they started from scratch on this one.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Definitely probably a good idea. So we'll try to run through this really quick. The cores. Each core gives you plus 10 melee power, plus 4 range power, 25 spell points, 10 universal spell power, plus 1 arcane cash level, and plus 2 effective bard levels, and plus 2 maximum bard songs. You also gain Inspire Courage if you didn't have it for the first one. Glitter of Fame is plus 1 to all stats and saves. Harmonic Resonance. Attacks have a chance of building up resonance on your enemies, increasing their sonic vulnerability and reducing their armor class by 2 per stack. Pretty good. 4, Intoxicating Presence. Enemies that strike you have a chance to be fascinated.
That's good.
Yeah, it breaks it up. This is one of those things. People often don't realize how useful these kind of things are because it interrupts their attack chain.
Sure.
It won't last very long because you'll probably hit them pretty quick, but it interrupts their attack chain, so that's great. Grandeur. Friendly spellcasts bestow a bonus of plus 3 AC and PRR. And offensive spellcasts now build up Harmonic Resonance on an internal cooldown. Cool. Majesty. You're now immune to charisma damage. Neat.
That's pretty good for a bard.
Right? You do not suffer from arcane spell failure. Also really cool. Also 25 universal spell power. That's pretty significant there. Not suffering from arcane spell failure is pretty awesome.
Sure.
That in and of itself is going to make this a more used tree. Tier 1. First Harmonic Chord. Your Inspire Courage has up to plus 3 damage, hit, save versus fear, 9 universal spell power, and you also gain an additional double that. Siren Song was relocated, it turns into a second Fascinate button. Music of the Spider Queen now also adds neutralized poison to your bardic inspiration. Dirge made it actually work and be good, otherwise no change. Working's good.
Yippee!
Yeah. The abilities here are all strength and charisma. Tier 2, second harmonic chord. Inspire Confidence now also has additional +3 to skills, and you double that. Bound Fate was relocated, no change. Rain was relocated and no change. It was a tier 3, I think, so it came down. Tier 3, third harmonic chord. Your Inspire Greatness has additional +3 PRR, plus up to +10 negative healing and repair amplification. You gain double that. Grim Fate was relocated and has no change. Again, moved down. Arcane Hymn. Haha. This is where things get a little interesting. You sing a magical hymn that resonates with the arcane sphere. When you activate this ability, your target is surrounded by magical energies bestowing resonance. The way these work, each member of your party, including yourself, may only benefit from one hymn at a time, regardless of source. Attempt to activate this ability on someone else will dispel the hymn from your former target. If you attempt to activate a different hymn on someone who's already benefiting from this one, it will dispel this hymn and it applies the new one. You may activate this ability on yourself. So the way the boiler that down, you'll get 4. We'll talk about the other ones in a minute. You get to cast this on yourself or someone else. If you have all 4, you can cast them on up to 4 people in your party. So, with the restriction basically being you can only have one of each active at a time, and each player can only have one active on themselves at a time. Kind of how it works. The Arcane is +1 to Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma, 20 to Universal Spell Power, 2 to Spell Penetration, 4 to UMD, and 10% to Fire, Cold, Acid, and Electric Absorption. Hey, that's kind of deep.
Mm-hmm.
Aria was relocated, no change. Tier 4, 4th Harmonic Chord, Inspire Heroics, grants +3 AC, dodge, saves. You gain an additional +3 to AC and saves. The Martial Hymn is +1 to Strength, Dexterity, and Wisdom. Interesting. +2 to Sneak Attack dice, 20 hit points, 10 PRR and MRR, and 5 to AC, and 10 to Melee and Range Power. The Divine Hymn is +1 to Strength, Charisma, and Wisdom, +1 to Smite Evil, +2 to hit damage confirmed criticals, +10 PRR, and +25 positive, negative, and spell power. The Primal Hymn is Wisdom, Dexterity, and Constitution, 25 hit points, 10 spell resistance, and healing amp, and 10% thrown and bow attack speed, +3 strength while raging. Which is really a strange one. That one's like, everything is, or most of that stuff is like incongruous to itself. Most people don't rage with thrown and use thrown and bows at the same time.
Sure.
Anyways, those are all
But if you're
better.
but if you're a druid or
Yeah, sure.
a barbarian, I mean,
Oh, there's uses for it.
you're raging.
The 5th chord, new bard song, Inspire Transcendence. It's +1 spell DCs, tactics bonuses, 3 spell resistance, and true seeing. You also gain from +1 to DCs, tactics, and +3 SR, and are immune to blindness and have true seeing. Great. You get a free meta magic at tier 5 between Eschew, Extend, or Enlarge. Masquerade has a 10%, also now has a 10% spell cost reduction. Blade Song is 2d6 sonic damage on hit, scaling with spell power, +3% competence to melee attack speed, and +1 critical multiplier on 1920. Tier 6.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah. No, this tree's a lot better. Tier 2 or Tier 6, you get Greater Shout as an SLA. You get a free meta magic between Quicken, Embolden, or Intensify. Turn the Tide. Cleaned up what it actually gives you, made sure it's actually working as intended. There you go. That's Fate Singer. Way better. Like, really way better. My bard may live here now.
I'll bet Graham is happy.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. A lot of fun stuff in there. All right. Divine Sphere. Here we go. Let's see. Unyielding Sentinel. This Destiny was meant to do 2 things. Keep you alive and help you tank. It's decent at the first, not so great at the second. Most of the changes here are meant to help you tank. The 2 new actives aren't perfect. They had some bigger plans and ran into tech issues in doing what we wanted, hoping they'll at least be helpful and we can tweak numbers until they are. Commanding Presence hate doubles up to 300%. Stand the Tide's extra hate jumps up to 50% per stack. So you get an extra 150% there. Stand to get the Tide's extra hate now applies to missile weapon damage and magic damage as well. It was previously melee only. Cool. Divine Energy resistance can now be cast directly on allies instead of only yourself. That's nice.
That's nice.
Ward Against Evil's light damage scales with 400% of the higher of melee and range power. That's it also now grants you immunity to mind control effects of evil creatures at rank 3. That's the light guard. You can now use Undying Vanguard while crowd controlled and or helpless. The temporary hit points now last for 30 seconds. I don't actually know how long they last right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, how long did it last now?
30 seconds seems like about what it was to me. Maybe
Seems
I think
longer to me.
I
You know,
was
if
20 seconds or something like that.
it might be 20 seconds now. Yeah.
Maybe it was 10, somewhere there. The new ones, Tier 4, draw them out, melee attack. It's +3 weapon damage, and it adds 300 hate for the user to creature it hits on top of its normal damage with a 6-second cooldown. And Tier 6, Celestial Mandate, +5 weapon melee attack, and adds 2,000 hate for the creatures on top of its normal damage. Cool.
When you really, really need to have that attention drawn away from other folks.
I mean, I think those are really good because it gives incentive for people to do something other than just shield block, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can take that, take one of those, shield block, get that hit in really quick. 2,000 extra hate. It's great.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I think there's not a lot of changes here. Looks pretty good. Exalted Angel. This is a good tree for those who can make use of the skills in it. We analyzed it and didn't see much we thought merited major change, though we might try to loop back for some bug fixes before release. We did make a change to one skill for game balance reasons. Reborn in Light no longer charges no longer charges. Instead, it is once per rest. It keeps its 10-minute cooldown. This is the come back alive, the resurrection while you're dead ability. I think this was probably the second most unpopular change in the whole thing out of all of these changes, because people were using this more than once per rest. Still had to cut 10-minute cooldown.
Right.
But I think part of this is, well, they did say it was game balance reasons. I think I already said, I don't remember if I said this only before or during the show, but I think part of the reason they're changing the charging part is it was probably only supposed to, you probably had to recharge it every time, and you didn't really have to do that.
Yeah, but that's a long cooldown. I mean,
it is a long
cooldown. It isn't like you're going to have, well, I guess you could have, somebody re-resurrecting themselves multiple times during a raid boss fight or something.
Yeah, I understand why they're doing it for game balance reasons. I appreciate that they're saying they're doing it for game balance reasons. I never made effective use of this ability.
Oh, neither have I.
But I understand people not liking that nerf. It's a big change. There you go. Divine Crusader, also a pretty good tree in its current form, but lacks a little scaling and punch. And adding punch, they wanted to give some solid bonuses for divine characters in here. You can get access to some alternative favored weapons and then really make them shine if you've got a line of divine levels. We think War Priest and War Souls will shine in here, along with Paladins once Knight of the Chalice gets revamped later in the year. Castigation now grants its listed melee power and works on bosses as listed.
Yay.
No Regret now grants its listed melee power. Yay.
Good.
Yeah. Strike Down's tooltip now correctly says it deals light damage, which now scales with 200% melee power. Confront Any Foe adds 3 weapon damage and scales with 300% melee power. Smite the Wicked. Damage is now 100 against evil creatures and 100 against undead creatures. Evil undead take both. It scales with 200% melee power. Destroys undead and evil outsiders under 1,500 hit points on a Vorpal. Stand and Be Judged now has a DC of 10 plus Wisdom modifier plus character level plus stunning bonuses. They also made it faster and more reliable to cast a few updates ago. Celestial Barbant now has 1 rank that does what the old 3rd rank did. It costs 20 spell points, and now you can put a whole bunch of meta magics on it, and it's quicker to cast. Cool.
Nothing, no negatives there.
Yeah. They moved Celestial Champion one spot to the left. It feels better there. What? Okay, fine.
Okay, thanks.
Celestial Champion's Double Strike and Double Shot are now Sacred typed. This was a little controversial because it doesn't stack with Zeal now, which is like one of the main people that are expecting to be in this tree. So that was kind of lame. It's still higher than that, but they got a new Tier 4 Book of War multi-selector. Pick one of the following to gain as a favored weapon: Longsword, Longbow, Morningstar, or Greatsword. And then Tier 6, there's a Wrath of the Divine. While wielding a favored weapon in your main hand, you get +1 to hit damage for every 2 religious lore feats you have with all equipped weapons and shields. All pretty good.
That's nice.
Yeah,
Sure.
So nothing
Really helps the pure paladins. Extra 10 to hit and damage is, or rather 5 to hit. No, 10 to hit and damage would be very, very nice.
Yeah. It makes up a little bit for the loss of the double strike or double shot stacking. Let's see. Primal Sphere changes. All right. How are we doing on time? Oh boy. Apologies. There's a lot to go through here. We want to make sure we do some due diligence with that. Okay. Fury of the Wild. Pretty good Destiny in its current state, but not enough melees found a reason to stick with this one versus Dreadnought. Very true. We'd especially like two-handed fighters to hang out here, so we added some spice for them. Please note that two-handed fighting style does not include natural weapon style, regardless of whether or not you're using a two-handed weapon. The cores each add an additional +2 damage with two-handed weapons, along with what they currently do. Fury made Placid is reduced to a 2% chance on no save. The healing scales with melee power. You also gain 10% double strike and +20 PRR and MRR while in this state. Unbridled Fury no longer requires charging. It keeps its 5-minute cooldown. You can now use Unbridled Fury while under anti-magic. Yay.
Well, that's nice.
That shows up a few times more, too. There's a new Tier 1. It's a multi-selector with Boulder Toss. Boulder's Might. Requires being in two-handed fighting style to use. You get a +5 weapon attack with a 6-second cooldown. And the ranks add +1 and 2 to the critical multiplier of that attack. Great. It's much better than Boulder Toss, I'll tell you that.
Sure. I don't think anybody ever really used that, so.
I tried. Yeah. There's a new Tier 5, Devastating Blow. It's +1 critical multiplier on 19 to 20 with melee weapons.
Yeah, they're really trying to draw people out of
right?
Legendary Dreadnought.
Which I think is great.
Yeah.
Although I will point out here that this is melee weapons, not ranged weapons, who also like to hang out here. All the changes here do not help ranged, probably because they're doing just fine in this tree.
Sure.
There's also another tier 5 strong swings, +10 melee power, and while fighting in two-handed fighting style, it's +25 instead. Great. I think we like all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're two-handed.
No problems here.
Primal Avatar. This is another fairly weird tree. There's things we didn't like to hit that he'd still like to, or didn't get to that he'd like to. The complex spell that is Tsunami in particular. But the primary thing they tried to do was make it more accessible and less frustrating by eliminating the spirit charge mechanic. Yay! Before, it was very difficult to perform well in this tree if you couldn't min-max spirit regeneration. That should no longer be a concern. Tree form still isn't amazing, but that's unfortunately something that'll need to get addressed another time. At the very least, you should get to use it more reliably and longer in most cases.
Yeah.
So spirit charge is gone. Nothing uses that, no longer reduced. There's no spirit decay. The spirit is gone. Strength of Spirit is now a passive, granting +20 universal spell power. The Primal Travel now has a 90-second cooldown instead of casting Spirit. Mighty Monk Spirit no longer reduces spirit decay. And instead grants +15 MRR. Woohoo!
Nice.
Yeah. Eternal Return no longer got spirit. Yeah. Walk with Spirits is no longer toggle. On activation, you gain its effects for 30 seconds. Has a 4-minute cooldown. The Avatar of Nature. Each of its sizes now lasts for 6 seconds, except for the largest, which lasts for 12, and then shuts off the form. It now has a 5-minute cooldown.
So there's no way for you to keep being the big tree. It's just a sheer. It lasts for so long, and then you're done.
Right. And I was trying to think because I have played with it. My monk, if I need to be in a a primal sphere, this is the one that he typically is in. And so you're looking at 6 second, 18. You're looking at 30 being in this form for 30 seconds, which mostly feels about the same for him. I'm not positive, but it feels like it's about the same. The big thing here, it has a 5-minute cooldown, which I feel like actually means I would use this more often. Because you don't have to charge up to 30. Like, you basically wanted to charge up to 30 before you used it.
Okay, so
right.
Spirit used to be I'm not super familiar with Spirit generation. So did Spirit generation, I guess from what you've read earlier, that Spirit generation was a thing. It was more difficult to do, say, than charging up everything is nothing, for example.
Oh, absolutely. Because it decayed,
Okay,
too. That was the part that was really the pain.
I see.
So you didn't just keep it, and then a bunch of the abilities would decay it faster. So it's kind of a problem in that aspect, right? So I think you'll end the time that you retrieve for most people will probably be around the same, maybe a little longer. There were some builds that could like optimize spirit charges. These were typically like warlocks using an aura with the tree form to kind of maximize generating that spirit.
Right, and that's what I did on the only tree character I ever made, and I just I didn't really like it. So
sure, that's kind of the one thing that I can kind of speak to in that. I think for the vast majority of people, they're going to be in the tree form at least as long as they were, and if not longer. And they'll be able to use it more because you don't have to generate. You don't have to get up to 30 to make that happen, right? I think even those builds that were optimal, again, I haven't played one of them, but I think they'll actually spend more time be able to spend more time in the form overall because they can use it more frequently. I think. I'm not sure on that one. The last thing in here, Summer Smoke, Supple as Spring, and Chill of Winter are now applied more efficiently, should cause fewer performance issues, and should no longer get stuck on players. Yay. Like Bardar's, the effects are reapplied every few seconds and expire after some time. These now only apply to party members. Sorry, this was important for performance reasons. Yeah. Unfortunate, but let's be honest, pets are not exactly the most effective use of those abilities.
So. Yeah, if you're really trying to make your pet, a big fighter and using this to do it, I think you've missed the point. Pets really are and will never be, legitimate, basically replacement party members. So.
Yeah, there are some. I mean, there's stuff in this tree that helps with pets for sure. It's just not those things really. So. All right. I think we like the stuff here. This tree, I think, more than any other tree, still needs work because the tree form is still kind of notably, it kind of slows down your attack speed a lot. So that was kind of always my issue with it. The numbers are big, but they don't seem to mesh with the how much you're losing in terms of attack speed. So. Shirati Champion. This tree is alright for casters and not great for ranged characters in its current state. A lot of the bow users are pulled over by Fury right now, so we gave it a bit of that power to make Shirati a more viable choice for them. They don't want to take Fury away from bow users entirely, or Shirati away from casters. They just want to make it a more viable choice for ranged weapons. So, the first 5 cores, replacing their existing attack and damage bonuses, add +1 to hit and damage with ranged weapons. Let's see. Favorable winds, Fey Power, and Stay Frosty all now scale with 200% range power, as does Rainbow's random damage, Stay Good's light damage, so extra damage there for everybody with range power. Yay. Stay Frosty now passively provides its +3 and 6 spot and listen. Yay. Add clarifying language to the double rainbow to indicate that its spells may scale with some combination of melee range or spell power, depending on what the origin effects it finds. Makes sense. Right. So Rainbow's random damage scales to 200%. Double Rainbow is whatever it should be. Whirling Wrist now also grants up to +6 double shot. Wild shots and rain of arrows scales 200% damage or range power. Rain of arrows no longer requires charging, has a 3-minute cooldown, and costs 1 action point. It tooltip now properly it reflects its 20% of application per second. Tea with the Queen now costs 1 action point. That track also debuffs fortification by 2% per stack. Stand and Deliver now also grants +1 multiplier on with 19 and 20 with ranged weapons. Yay.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did they say what kind of multiplier is that, or rather bonus is that?
Whatever the Destiny bonus is. So it should
Okay.
stack with anything that's not another
Should
Destiny.
stack with everything then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Into the Weeds adds +3 PRR and MRR per stack. Cool.
Nice.
There's a new tier 6 Horizon Shot. Your next shot with a ranged or thrown weapon has +400% damage and +16 to its critical threat range with a 30-second cooldown. That's basically Adrenaline.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. And they're going to change the name because Horizon Shot already exists in another tree.
Yep.
Oops.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on there.
Sniper. Sniper. What's that tree called?
Deepwood Sniper.
Deepwood Sniper. Thank you. Yeah.
I mean, this looks good. I don't know if it's going to be enough to. You get to use that every 30 seconds. Is that more than the Adrenaline that you could use and using the Fury, Unbridled Fury, with on top of a mini shot? I don't think so.
I guarantee you, arcane archers that have Slinger will stay in Fury.
Yeah, it's probably true. I think most archers will. The only thing that's nice that I think is kind of tempting is the 19 to 20 multiplier on crits.
Yeah, that's nice.
But otherwise, I don't think you're gonna get up to that damage. All right, let's go back to the Marshall tree, and we'll go in reverse order. Let's talk about Shadow Dancer, my second least favorite tree. This tree needed help. Look,
it did. Yeah, it did. It did. There's some really nice stuff in it, though.
It does. It had a lot of cool things in it that were nearly impossible to use, either because DC calculations were broken or because you needed shadow charges, which were even harder to get, or hard to get and even harder to keep. This is why I didn't like the tree. Those are gone now. There's no shadow charges. You don't have to juggle them. The whole tree should work a lot better. There's still a few outstanding things that don't shine, like Dark Imbuement, but playtesting the new version of Shadow Dancers has been viable. So Shadowlance now adds Assassinate bonuses and either your intelligence or dexterity modifiers to its DC and uses full character level.
Hang on for a second. Can we just take a step back?
Sure.
I think it's notable to take a look at that last word in that last sentence that you read to us. The word viable. Okay, so now Shadow Dancer is viable. I'm excited for a viable ED. I mean, could you not have said, now it's fun, or now it's significantly better than it was before? I mean, make me feel good about it. Don't tell me it's viable. Oh boy.
Sure. I only know one person who made this tree look good. I stink at it. I'm terrible with the shadow charges.
Yeah, well, I never ever used anything on that left side of the tree because the shadow charges, I never really understood them, and I just never really felt the need to take the time to understand how they really worked.
Let's see. Shadowlance's blind no longer based on chance. Tries to apply each hit. The damage now scales with 400% if either your melee or range, whichever is higher. They increase the damage, and this cooldown is now down to 10 seconds. Let's see. Shrouding, Strike, and Shot no longer mark the target. Instead, they apply a stack of improved destruction.
Ooh, that's nice.
Yeah, 6-second cooldown. Consume now adds its Assassinate DC, higher of intelligence, yada, yada, yada. There's a 3-minute cooldown. Should now more consistently pick living enemies to target, and no longer pick doors, barrels, and miscellaneous non-enemy targets.
You're like your pet and stuff.
Shadow Manipulation had the same DC changes and has a 3-minute cooldown and no longer requires Cloak of Shadow. Cloak of Shadow is no longer requires Shouting Strike and Shot. Executioner's Strike and Shot now has a 12-second cooldown. Now has a DC of 10, plus the character level, plus intelligence or dexterity, plus your assassinate bonuses. It can now be used while under anti-magic. Yay.
That's good.
You can now move while using it, even better. See, Dark Imbuement no longer uses charges, just functions with a 2-minute cooldown and costs 1 action point, and no longer requires Shadow Form, which also no longer uses charges. It clarifies that it's now considered a major form. I don't know what major forms are specifically, but this now
Yeah, what does that mean?
Probably it's a type of stance, essentially, or a form. Probably has something to do with, the one that kind of jumps out to my head would be like the tree form, which you can't use at the same time anyways, but
Okay.
I don't know, some sort of making
Some
sure
sort of
you don't use it with
angelic form and those
yeah,
sort of
something
other
like that.
forms. Okay.
Untouchable now passively grants 3% dodge and +1 critical damage multiplier in rolls of 19 to 20. Yay.
Well, that's always good.
I mean, if you want to pull me out of Dreadnought, you kind of need to put that in there because that's a big part of Dreadnought, right?
Absolutely.
Speaking of Dreadnought, this Destiny is very good in its current incarnation. I agree. We opened up some of the restrictiveness to the 2 attacks and fixed an ability that did nothing and wasn't good. For balance versus other Destinies, we did diminish some of their damage versus helpless targets only. Momentum Swing and Lay Waste no longer require Power Attack to be active to use and no longer require Cleave or Great Cleave to take, but those do still reset the cooldown of Momentum Swing. Lay Waste now adds its trip bonuses to DC. Great. Unmovable and Thick-Skinned are no longer action boosts. They really didn't act like them anyways, but we're just using the charge counters. Instead, they're simply restricted to their respective cooldowns, which are unchanged. Great, you can use them more. Fantastic. Tactical Genius never really worked, is now Unusual Tactics. Passive, you're a study and master of a wide variety of methods for gaining the upper hand. You get +2 to the DCs of your tactical feats, rune arm shots, breath weapons, assassinate, poisons, and +2 to perform, bluff, diplomacy, and intimidate skills. It's kind of an eclectic grouping there.
Yeah, no kidding.
Combat Brute's helplessness damage is now 15%. Also an unpopular change. This was, you think you said it was down from 50%?
It was down from 50%.
Yeah,
correct.
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
That is some of the balance that they're trying to tweak here. The good news is it's only against helpless things, which means your boss DPS isn't going down. So there's that.
Yeah, but if you're a tactical fighter and likes to, stun things, this really hurts you.
It does. I agree. It's a lot less damage. There's been some calls for reducing that. I'm gonna guess that they probably won't until it comes out, and then they'll kind of see where it is.
Yeah, no, they won't. They won't. They always like the sledgehammer approach instead of the scalpel approach. So.
I like to think of it as a seesaw. Like they're trying to find the balance point, and they typically they're too far one way, and then they go too far the other way, and they kind of just keep bouncing until they get in the middle.
Yeah, and then they drive their players nuts because they don't know in which direction they're finally going to go. It's like look left, look right. Which one do I choose?
You can only do math so much until you got to put it in the wild and see how it goes. So,
true.
It's the thing. All right. Last but certainly not least, Grandmaster.
The granddaddy of them all. Here we go.
I think most of this is better. This tree needed a lot of love. It was only okay for monks and really not great for everyone else. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I disagree because, pretty much every single build has a twist put in for the Dance of Flowers, the one that adds +0.5, +1, or +1.5 Ws to their weapon damage. That was a tier 2 ability that pretty much every melee or melee
but you had to be centered.
Guy had to have.
You had to be centered to use it, though.
Oh, maybe you're right.
That's the thing. You had to be centered. Now that's going to change, but I think this is actually a fair statement.
Okay.
I think look, if you're not a monk, this tree sucks. Like the only other class that I ever had effectiveness with was my cleric, because I was able to bump up his wisdom a whole bunch, and that was like the only thing he was using. And it also helped, I think, at the time he was wearing cloth robes. So I was able to use some of the other stuff. Other than that, like, you had to be centered to use like everything here. Which was, so fewer things require strict centering, which is great. Top tier actives become massively more powerful with the changes. So they were scaled back somewhat to reflect being able to use them much more often. We'll come back to that. There's more twist fodder. Might be a little too much twist fodder in here. So there's some interesting things. This is a much better tree for not a monk, like hands down. If you are a monk, my monk lives. The only reason I saw for my monk to take Grandmaster of Flowers these days was the ability that I can't remember, which is the knockdown ability, and everything is nothing. Other than that, most of the time I run in Dreadnought anyways because the DPS there is a lot better. So, I think now I'm probably going to spend more of my time in this tree. So,
sure.
Inner Focus and Wholeness of Spirit now allow for movement during use. Great. Wholeness of Spirit has its coolness reduced to 2 minutes. I believe that is the heal, the self-healing one.
Yeah, I believe so.
The key actives now scale with the higher of melee or range power. They also get stunning bonuses added to their DC calculations, can be used under anti-magic as they are not spells, and are no longer linked in a line.
But you know what? They're supernatural abilities, and they should fall under anti-magic. Yeah. So I disagree with that change.
Is supernatural the one that you can use?
Supernatural. No, you can use extraordinary abilities in anti-magic, but you can't use supernatural abilities. And I don't care. I'm not going to take them anymore. This change helps me, but it doesn't make sense thematically, and I wish they would change it back to not working in anti-magic.
I am so going to get rid of those little key blast things that the only reason I used them was to charge up everything is nothing, and I don't have to do that anymore.
Right.
See, Lily Petal and Orchid Blossom now care about levels 26 to 30 in terms of scaling. It was previously capped at 25. Oops. Lily Petal now grants 5 key instead of costing key. Cool. A Scattering of Petal no longer grants dodge. Instead, it grants plus 100 PRR and MRR for 12 seconds. It also reduces enemy fortification. Let me finish it. Enemy fortification by 200% for 12 seconds, and effective creatures lose immunity to sneak attack for that duration. Holy crap, that's a lot of reduction. It now has a detect the same size as Drifting Lotus, i.e. twice as large, and it has a 90-second cooldown. No, the MRR cap does not get increased. Dang it.
Yeah, well, this shows you how unfamiliar certain people are at a certain company in Needham, Massachusetts.
They're not see, here's the thing. They're not unfamiliar with this. They use it as a balancing tool. Like, they get it. They just have the strong belief that MRR cap is going to be unbalanced if they raise it for...
Well, why would you give a class that can only use cloth armor, whether it's an outfit or a robe, it has a max of 50, why would you give them an ability that would increase their MRR to 100?
Because a fighter might be in this tree and they can use it.
Are you really think a fighter? Yeah, you think a fighter's going to use a tier 6 Grandmaster Flowers ability?
If they're still in it, yes.
Oh, come on.
I mean, they're gonna every fighter I know is gonna jump out of this as soon as they can and go back to Dreadnought. But I'm just telling you why it's in there. I agree with you. I think I'd rather see this like here's 100 MRR or PRR, and here's 20 MRR and 20 to your MRR cap. That would be way better to me. I agree. Like we mostly agree on the MRR cap.
Sure. Yeah.
Let's see.
By the way, Drifting Lotus was the ability that you're trying to think of that would knock people down.
Yeah. Great ability. A Dance of Flowers is now, they reduced the Dance of Flowers damage, but no longer requires you to be centered. And then Linabelle said, hey, agreed that it would be great if the damage went back up to what it was if you were centered. Great.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect
Yep.
sense.
Let's see. Running with the Wind now adds 6% double strike to everyone. No stances required. Hail of Blows adds +3 melee damage in addition to its double strike. Walking with Waves, Standing with Stone, Dancing with Fire, or Dancing with Flame no longer requires stances for their bonuses.
Again, if you could give the extra half a W for like in Dance of Flowers if you're centered, why on earth wouldn't you increase these abilities in excuse me, if you were in water stance or earth
Sure.
stance?
I think that, well, I don't think they wanted to have, they originally took everything out that required being centered. So, that they put that one back in. I don't know. This is also more specific, right? It requires a specific stance. I'll
Hmm.
tell you, I love this. Like, this is one of the reasons why I'm coming back to the tree, is because I can put this stuff on my character without having to be in the right stance. That's great. So, we'll see.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure, but but if I'm in for but if I'm, yeah, but if I'm in water stance, then give me
a bonus.
give me more dodge bonus. Get I don't know what do I
Sure.
get now? Get a ton now. Let me get like an extra I don't know 5% or whatever.
I see what you're saying.
Whatever a reasonable plus is. Give me that.
I see what you're saying. I don't disagree. I think they just were trying to get rid of all that stuff to make it not appear less good as being centered. So I don't know.
Mhm.
We're gonna skip the next one. We'll come back to it. Crew will be there for another 10 minutes. The new tier 2 Flower's Thorn +3 weapon attack with a 6-second cooldown. Has a cool pedal effects. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Tier 5 devastating critical +1 critical multiplier 19 to 20. You need that to compete with Legendary Dreadnought.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
Everything is nothing. The good news is it moves to a 3-minute cooldown and no longer requires charging. The good news ends there. It now
No,
has.
hang on. Oh, no, no.
Is it a longer
All the
cooldown?
stun bonuses also add to your DC.
Oh,
The
right.
DC of everything is nothing. So that's potentially another 33
Wow.
plus 22 stun and the 11 insightful bonus to your stunning. So to the DC. So right now my what do you call it? My everything is nothing DC goes up to like around 110 or 112, whatever. It's around there. It's a lot better.
Yeah,
So that's a pretty big plus.
that is a pretty good. Thank you for catching me on that. Now the bad news. One, it has a smaller detect, double the size of Drifting Lotus, but still smaller than its existing inversion, which actually still feels pretty big in terms of effects. But I think
Right.
like it had a huge range, right? Like
Oh,
it was
absolutely.
gigantic.
Yeah,
Uh,
you could take yeah.
yeah. Two, it hits a maximum of 4 enemies. This is both for balance and performance reasons, as it significantly taxes the game on use and will now be used more frequently. A lot of people took issue with the taxes the game part.
They sure did.
Um, and I understand that because I think I have never had the experience of hit this button lag lock or anything like
Nope.
that.
Nope.
Now, I respect the fact that that does not mean that it doesn't exist. And I appreciate that they are telling me that it is both balance and performance reasons. I think the other thing I saw a lot of was comparing it to Mass Frog, which hits 6 enemies, has a 1-minute cooldown.
Hmm.
I sort of agree that is with the devs and the fact that that's not really something to compare it to.
And
I but
their logic, Patrick, on that is, that it's a higher level ability. It's like a level 28 ability.
yeah, you have to be level 28
Uh,
to use it. This you could use at level 20. I
right.
all I'm saying is I agree that it's not. It's kind of like comparing apples and oranges. Doesn't mean you can't compare them though. But I agree with the premise that it's the maximum of 4 enemies thing though is that's very much more restrictive than it used to be. because it didn't have a maximum.
Right.
So,
Well, regarding their argument of being able to use, um, everything is nothing at a lower level. Okay, that's absolutely true. But the the uh, the the fact that frog is only usable at level 28 and higher, that doesn't mean that has absolutely zero meaning to a player like me,
mhm,
because I stay at cap. I hardly ever TR,
sure.
and I stay at cap. So as far as I'm concerned, frog and everything is nothing are level 30 abilities. So they
Okay.
need to be the same. They need to be at least, well, I don't want to say the same, but they need to be at least equivalent.
Yeah. I hear you. I would love to see this be 6 enemies, 10 enemies, like any number higher than 4 sounds great,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Well, it certainly doesn't fit with the idea that everything is nothing. It's now four things are nothing, and
sure,
how uncool and unfun is that? I mean, you had such a cool name. You had two opposites, everything and nothing, in the same
sure.
sentence, and the name of a very iconic power, or at least for
Mhm,
DDO, it was our iconic power for years. And now you're going to completely should just, if they just changed the name of the damn thing, and I would just, I would just drop that power and go straight and keep the other 6 level
sure.
power, scattering of petals. I would just switch over to that. But
I would have see, here's kind of where I land on this. I don't like it being reduced to 4 enemies. I can respect it from a balance and performance thing. I like a lot of the other stuff. The smaller detect range, I'm not really that concerned about in general, although I'll probably notice it a little more. Uh, the thing that I think I kind of look at this though is I would like them to consider doing 2 things with it. One is reducing it to 1 action point because I believe it's 2.
yes.
And they did that for a lot of other abilities, and I think how much you've nerfed this ability, I think that would be reasonable. The other thing is, and/or would when you use this ability, I'd like it to do something else, specifically in the realm of help me during I'm fighting this boss with a sack of hit points, kind of a thing. Whether that's some sort of buff to me and my friends, or even just me, but something that tactically gives it something interesting a reason to use this when there aren't a bunch of things around, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, of course, like, so if you do an everything is nothing, you have a chance of erasing monsters
Mhm.
out of existence, which is obviously a great
Or it
thing,
does damage.
or it does damage, right? So
Yeah.
if you fail, or the monster makes its saving throw, it'll take 1,000 points of damage, and it'll be basically stunned or helpless for 6 seconds. So I think it would be reasonable to make it so that it does an amount of damage even to boss monsters, even to red names and purple names. So I don't know. A 1,000 seems kind of wimpy considering how many
How much damage you can do
hit
now?
points
Yeah.
a boss has. Make it 10,000 hit points, or something along
It's just
that
gonna
line.
kill trash, which I don't know. I'm fine with the damage. I just like it to do something that is tactically interesting during a boss fight. That's what
Mm,
I'm kind of looking for. Is okay, I can use this more often. Can you give me more reasons to use this more often,
hmm
as opposed to pile a bunch of stuff up, clear the room? Like,
right.
how can I use this in a way that is interesting? And because you look at something like Blitz, which now we can definitely compare these 2 things, right? Because these are 2 trees that are vying for attention between each other. What can everything is nothing give me that Blitz I could use any time, right?
Yeah, and you can keep that running
You
through the
keep it
entire
running and it
dungeon.
goes, which is one of the reasons why Legendary Dreadnought is so powerful. Everything
hmm
is nothing is boom, it's done, it's over,
Right, and then
and you can
basically you're
use it every three
useless for
minutes.
5 minutes.
Well, it's 3 minutes now. Um,
Yeah.
but can we get something? I think it would be more interesting of an ability at, let's say, for a minute of that, it does something else that is helpful against other things. I do want to point out, it was said by the devs that this ability and things like whale, that kind of target stuff, are supposed to be somewhat, or it was implied or said that they should be somewhat selective about what they try to hit. So if something has Death Ward on it, it shouldn't hit that. It shouldn't choose that over something that doesn't.
Right, because you could be surrounded by death warded mobs and or things that are phasing in and out, or bosses, and you get absolutely no benefit out of the power.
So that's at least a good part of it, in the sense that it hopefully you don't lose some of your enemies there. But yeah, some good, a lot of bad with that ability, unfortunately. And I think that this is by far the one that's getting the most heat on the forums, by far.
Yes.
And I think rightfully so. And it's a big change. And
it's a big change. Well, in my opinion, it's an unneeded change, but but considering they're reducing the radius of its effect, I would think that by default it's going to reduce the number of monsters it affects. So if there is a performance hit, it by default would reduce that anyway. So I would have liked to have seen them. Okay, I understand reducing the radius because you could just take care of everybody out in the entire platform if you're doing the fighting the Lord of Blades or something. You could take care of everybody on the platform and just one keystroke. So I could understand that it might be game balance wise it might be better, and performance wise it would be better if the area effect was reduced a bit. So I'm okay with that. I'm just fine with that. But seriously, can we? I made reference to this earlier. This is a sledgehammer taken to an ability when I think maybe a scalpel would do. This is very similar to the nerf, or rather the initial change to the Amber Temple thing, where the dungeon maker just went crazy with placing monsters at various places, and then they made them respawn. It just went completely overboard. When the scalpel change was to move the NPC that you had to talk to. I mean, that's a scalpel change right there, and that accomplished all their goals and didn't really piss people off. What they're doing here really feels like another sledgehammer change, and I just wish that they would try to if they would try to avoid that at all costs.
I
But
think they generally try to. And I think the
but
biggest
they
reason.
still keep doing it. They keep doing it
They feel
over
like they
and
need to.
over.
Sometimes you need to. I mean, look. Sometimes a little hammer doesn't. A scalpel doesn't work. You need a sledgehammer. I mean, that's how it works. Like I said,
For an obvious problem, I agree.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Is most people don't have an experience of I use EIN, and the game servers have performance issues.
That's right. Nobody sees that.
Yeah.
I've never seen it. You've never seen it.
Yeah.
If the players have never seen it, how much of a performance problem could it possibly be?
I mean, it could be a lot. I mean, I do see
If we don't notice it, if the players don't notice the problem, it's like if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a noise? Well, you can argue that it doesn't because nobody sees it.
But let me twist it on its head though. I also have an experience of, I'm just in a public area and the whole instance locks down for 5 minutes. I have no idea what causes that, but I get affected by it. So
sure.
I mean,
well, I think that's mostly too many people in the instance. I mean,
maybe
I ran into a Sharn. I ran into that in Sharn the other night, and it just was completely motionless, couldn't move at all. and my wife happened to notice that, hey, there's a one next to the Sharn instance. That means there's a Sharn instance two. And so we moved over to Sharn instance two, where there was almost nobody. And guess what? It was lag free. So,
Sure.
I mean, just
I don't know. Like,
my point is this: I I I would take, considering of how non-transparent SSG slash Turbine has been in the past, I would take a lot of what I read from them with a huge grain of salt. Just put it that
okay.
way. That that makes, I get a little pessimistic, or you know uh, I don't know, damaged. It might be another word that you could use. Um, uh, but I'm sorry. I'm just, unless I actually have seen the issue myself, I'm just going to be skeptical.
And that's fine. You can. There's good reasons for that too. Um,
Yeah.
okay. Let's move on to the other news. Too hot to handle. So
Hmm.
Torque posted. So that raid, too hot to handle, kind of living up to its name. After watching you fight the good fight for a couple of weeks and going over the data, they've concluded that raid is overperforming modestly for their goals. Cordovin later posted something to the effect of, "There's like Kyber has completed one hard, yay lava divers,
Yes.
and Galanda's completed like 8, which I believe is omnipresence. I'm guessing.
It's mostly omnipresence, but Helter Skelter
Okay,
completed
good for them.
two, and there was another, I believe it was a channel raid that also completed one.
Great. And then I think Sarlona completed 2 hards, and no one's completed elite. I think those were the
Right.
numbers that he put out there. So, um, overperforming modestly for their goals. Jeez, their goals are hard. Torque's goals are harsh, man. As a result, they're currently testing a few changes that will affect all difficulty levels, although the adjustment to elite will be much smaller. I'm fine with that. None
Yeah,
of these
sure.
changes will affect core mechanics of the raid, and instead will target pacing. The fix should be live within a few weeks, but they'll have an exact day soon. A few notes. This is one of the most difficult raids they've seen in a while. There have been no elite completions. A fair number of normal. I'm curious what his fair number of normal is, because I think that number is probably a lot lower than what most players would say is a fair number.
Well, in that
Um,
same post that mentioned about Cordovan, mentioned the number
yeah,
of completions of normal, rather, hard completions. He also said a few dozen completions, and I wasn't really sure if that means, a few dozen completions on every server, or was
sure.
it a few dozen completions divided amongst all the servers? I don't know what he means by that.
Eh, I don't know. Let's see. The guides they've seen posted have become more accurate, yet not perfect, indicating knowledge of the raid mechanics is mostly out there. There are still a few wrinkles, though, that you guys don't understand yet. Or there are still a few wrinkles, though, that if you guys don't understand, it will still cost you. Giving no spoilers, though. Thanks for the tease.
Sure.
This raid was designed to push our raiding community harder and to shake up things, to see what life would be like if elite first completion was something that might not happen day one of release. I'm fine with that. We've actually gotten a lot of positive feedback on this count. Even if the raid seems crazy, there's always the question for some, can you find a way? They opted for putting the gauntlet in Elite rather than Reaper because Reaper tree power doesn't match up well with the first Skull, and Skull 10 is just bonkers. Okay? Makes sense.
Hmm. Sure.
The minor nerf to Elite was after some consideration of not touching it at all, but the thinking is, since it hasn't been beaten yet, moving the goalpost slightly closer will just mean more people will be in the race. P.S. They almost called this raid "Go Die in a Fire." I thought it
Which
might have
would have
been on
been
the nose.
awesome.
It was
That would have
definitely
been
on
the
the
best
nose.
name of a raid ever.
Yeah, right. I think this is great. I've already said this will be in one of the reviews, maybe this one. That my stance is pretty much hard that if you understand the mechanics of the raid and you execute reasonably well, a pug should be able to complete normal. That's where I land. Not
And
necessarily
I'm right
week,
there with
not necessarily week 1 or even 2, but within a reasonable. There should be a point in time in which the general population is completing this on normal,
you. Yes,
assuming they
absolutely agreed.
execute well. So,
Right. People pay money for this
yeah,
for this expansion. They should be able to have a reasonable shot at getting, the raid loot.
And
So
enjoy the
completing on
content.
normal, being able to complete on normal is a reasonable expectation for anybody who's bought this
Hmm.
expansion, which means even the casuals,
Hmm.
they should have the expectation that if they do things right, then they should be able to complete. I'm fully behind you 100% on that, Patrick.
There's definitely varying degrees of that. Uh, I'm certainly fine with you need to bring a few items or have a few abilities at hand and roles covered and stuff like that.
Sure.
I'm growingly concerned with this idea that everyone who's coming in the raid needs to have a fire absorption item and a fire sheath, and that's getting a little crazy for normal for my taste. So
Well, they had Torque, who did this raid, also did RSO,
and killing time.
and you pretty much have to have
Hmm.
lightning. You have to have a high lightning resistance. You have to have lightning
Yep.
absorb, and it also helps if you're a blue dragon ancestry dragonborn,
And
and
not
RSO. That's how
wearing light
punishing.
or no armor.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
how punishing RSO was.
Mhm.
So I mean, this seems to be a theme for Torque, and I just wish he would lighten up. Now I get, okay, haha, they wanted to kick our asses and wanted to challenge us, and I get that. The mechanics of this raid I like very much.
I
All
agree.
the what do you call it? The trash running into
Hmm.
the lava becoming the what do you call it? The big giant bad guys. Um,
Forge
the
rates.
forge race. Yeah, the forge race. I like that mechanic. I mean, I like like the puzzles. It's a very solid raid mechanically
Hmm.
speaking, as far as I'm concerned.
Bounce. I'm glad they're looking at it, and I'm okay with that. And there's something to be said that the raid, it's fun when a raid is still challenging on Elite and R1 2 years later.
Sure.
But and that's what I like, that they're toning down normal, they're toning down hard. Elite is mostly staying the same. I'm fine with
Hmm.
that.
Sure. Same here.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, elite should be elite. It should be very, very difficult to complete, no doubt.
All right, let's cruise through some other stuff. So this show is not 3 hours long. Store news: Adventure in Advance, 25% off of Adventure Packs and Quest XP elixirs through June 13th. You can also get an Angel Elixir tier, Elixir of Angel tiers with the coupon code Angel Elixir. Let's see. Community news. 336th Chronicle. We got a shout out for our episode last week. The High Lords hosted a Caught in the Web teaching raid. You can usually find those on YouTube as well. DDO Players has their Sharn Heaven and Hell, episode 2, Annoying Goblins. The comment: you're walking around in a dungeon when you sense danger nearby. Using your spot skill, you find it's a trap? Find it's
Ooh,
blank. A trap seems like the most obvious answer to me, but
oh man, I didn't even see this one. Spot skill, you find it's a potato.
I think your danger sense needs some tuning.
Yeah, no doubt.
The Guild for the Week. Zerg is recruiting on Thelanis. Their mission: to strive to be the premier raiding guild on Thelanis. This is possible by embracing the challenge of endgame content and pushing ourselves to complete it sooner and harder than others think is possible. Have fun, guys. A lot of fun doing
Yeah,
it.
definitely go for it.
Yeah. Fansite news: Bard Life with Doug Glendower, Sharn on the Cogs. BioBreak had a post on DDO, A Ghost of a Chance. DDO Sunday with Alex and Lynn. Mickey's Delirium with Thasmaniac does Giant Hold. Shuri Monk and Heroics and Dia de Reaper Con Hibernum. I think I'm getting better at pronouncing that, but probably not. Streaming with Even, Sharn on Epics, DDO PL, folks ran level 18 dungeons, DDO Wiki Talk with Technical 13, aka Shoemaker as well. Axel also had videos about all of these Epic Past Life changes that you can check out as well. And we're just going to skip straight to closing now so we can get to the Masterminds of Sharn Part 2 review before this episode's too long. Thanks, Arkat, very much for joining me. We struggled a little bit to make this happen in a timely manner, but I do appreciate taking an hour and a half to talk about this stuff.
Sure, I'm
and
glad to
break
do
it
it.
down. Big picture, a lot of it's great. There's 3 or 4 things that are not But
Always the diplomatic, PJ. Always the diplomat.
yeah, well, I'm a glass half full kind of guy. Move on with my life. Anyways, but thanks, seriously, thanks for coming on and sharing the opinion. And you're representing a large portion of people too, especially when we're talking about everything is nothing and stuff like that. So I
Sure.
really appreciate you being on the show. And to all the other guests and contributors for DDOcast and to Standing Stone Games and Wizards of the Coast for helping us make this show happen and for making DDO happen too. And to Cyberbeers for hosting the podcast. If you'd like to support the show, you can visit our website, DDOCast.com, or you can support us on Patreon. You can hit us up, DDOCast.com, for show notes, MP3s, calendar, previous shows, and other fun stuff. If you want to talk about, join the conversation, leave us a comment, send me an email, DDOcast@gmail.com. Thanks very much for joining us, guys. Really appreciate it. Stay tuned for part 2 of our review for Sharn. Welcome back. This is part 2 of our Masterminds of Sharn review. We talked about last week, we talked about kind of our first impressions, and we talked about the story quest. Today, we're going to get into the cogs and probably the raid, and maybe a little bit farther than that. We'll kind of see how things go. With me this week, we have Axel, Asheris, Nimvind, and Arkat. Hello, guys. Welcome back.
What's up?
As behind the scenes inside baseball, we record all of this in one shot, so we kind of pretend like we're doing it in separate times. But the astute of you who actually watch the video portion and might notice that we're wearing the same clothes and stuff. So, anyways, right. So we talked about the quests, the storyline stuff. We got first impressions. Let's dive into the cogs. And for those who kind of don't have a good understanding what the cogs are. So the cogs is an explorer area. It's the explorer area that comes with it. It's pretty small. It's not very big. Trying to think of one that's analogous to it. It's way smaller than Ravenloft or Stormhorns. It maybe about the size of Wayloon, I think.
That sounds about right.
It's a little bit more subdivided though, right? There's different areas that you can kind of run around in. That you kind of run into.
It's more if it's compared to Wayloon, I feel like Wayloon is 2-story. This area is more 3-story. You can get actually really close to the cavernous top of the cogs.
Sure. Yeah. It's almost kind of if you're familiar with the Reaver's Reach area, there's the 4 pretty small explorer areas. It's kind of like if you take those and then link them together with tunnels. That's kind of more how it feels to me, anyways. There's also 8 quests down there, which they kind of tried to make it sound like they were functionally different, when they were kind of announcing what they were going to be. The only thing that's really different is there's no turn-in for them.
Yeah, I remember Cordovon mentioning something, a similarity to King's Forest with the rent. For me, I thought we're gonna go in there and some of the quests will be able to run, some of them won't. You have to farm instances to be able to get to all the quests, which sounds like a nightmare. So maybe it was gonna have a random aspect to it, and then they were like, "Nope, this is a nightmare. We're gonna make people pay us to complain to us."
Yeah, to me, they seem mostly just shorter in scope. I mean, they are really short, a lot of them, and there's still 2 I haven't run. But yeah, most of them, not too many different mechanics. I mean, there's the one where you have to run through a lot of tunnels. I called it the Chuck E. Cheese quest.
Roll call.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah,
that is hands down my least favorite one.
Yeah,
of the pack.
I ransacked it on 3 tunes. I hate it.
The
Yeah,
tunnels
was
are very
okay. I didn't
claustrophobic.
Yeah,
And I'm not even claustrophobic.
but yeah, nothing too different from the quest. They're just short.
Yeah.
I personally love the cogs. It's a more fun version of the Underdark.
That's a good way of putting it.
Because it's easier to see things. You can get between the sections a little bit easier
Mm-hmm.
than, let's say, you can get between the sections in Wayloon. And the quests, I haven't run all the quests either. Roll call is one of them, but all the ones that I have run, which I must have run about 5 or 6 of them. They're all pretty short, which honestly, in an explorer area, I appreciate. So,
Sure.
I don't feel like I have to advance the story. I can just go ahead and run out and get these things done, and it certainly makes for farming for loot easier. So, I really appreciate what they did with the cogs.
Yeah, one thing I really liked is how they spread them out to where there's pretty much an even running distance between them. And with the teleport option, I know this is unpopular with some people, but in this opinion isn't going to be one everyone has. But I really liked that they changed the teleport option so that it doesn't teleport you directly to the quest. I like to where it teleports you in convenient places, but not right to the quest. So that say when you're in a group and you want to have a session and run all the quests, you can kind of just run a quest and you can run through the whole place in this like a clockwise formation and kind of hit them all. The way they're designed, it gives you a reason to actually run through the adventure area,
Sure.
and it doesn't feel like a waste because along the way from running to quest, you're going to hit slayers and rares, explorers, things like that. And it makes for a way to where you can run the quest and enjoy the adventure area, and it both makes sense and not feel like a waste of time.
which is an improvement from Ravenloft.
Exactly.
Although with Ravenloft, because of this is kind of the flip side of the coin, right? Because before in the last segment, we were talking about how the city of Sharn is so small, the immersion isn't really there. But then you talk about like Ravenloft, like that explorer area gives you that nice feel of immersion, but it's so far. Like if you had to run to all of those quests, it would take you 20 minutes just to run from one quest to the next quest, right?
Well, it's not
So
too bad. I mean, from what I've managed to gather, I mean, it's like a minute from each of the different teleport options. And if you're
in
running
the cogs,
the
yeah,
quests, yeah, in the cogs, and they're so short that if you're running them back to back to back, it's not really that big of a deal. It's like a minute between each quest, and hopefully they've taken that runtime into account when they've designed the loot
I
drop
think so.
chances and experience. So if they have, then it's not a waste of time
Well,
in
the loot
terms of
drop's
how
the
I see
same.
it.
They're
Yeah.
using the same formula they've been using,
Okay.
so
Okay. Then.
that hasn't changed. But
Okay. Well, hopefully they did take it into account at least with the experience, because that way the runs to me I don't consider them just a waste of time. I consider them like part of the session or
sure.
part of the quest if they're taking into account with the experience at least.
We mentioned experience, and this just reminded me that I noticed that every single quest in Sharn is less Reaper XP than any other legendary quest I've ever seen. And like, granted, most of them are like medium to short length
Mhm.
and runtime, but I feel like there's a noticeable difference between the Reaper XP in Sharn and Ravenloft, like a really big noticeable
That's
difference.
interesting because I had the opposite sense.
I felt like it was at least 2,000 Reaper XP shorter.
That was not my. I think the same skulls for quests. I was actually getting more in Sharn. I think Sharn's
Wow.
isn't Sharn level 33, 34? I don't remember.
I thought it was like 36.
No, not that high, but I think it's higher than Ravenloft. They're all. I think they're all getting the short, or like they're not getting the long or very long modifier on any of them. Maybe just business, but not in general. But I think generally speaking, the XP was actually more there. Ash, what did you think about the cogs?
I haven't spent a ton of time in the cog so far. I know I haven't run all the quests. I've been in several of them, and I'd agree with what you guys are saying. They're shorter. I kind of like that though when you add in
Sure.
the run time. I like the Cogs Explorer area itself. I love the atmosphere of it. It's really fun. And I just enjoy running around out there. I like the ambiance. I think the size is right for it. I don't want it to be super big, especially when you have to run to quest entrances. That makes a lot of sense to me. So I think it fits in a lot of ways, and but I think it's a unique, fun area. I don't know. I'm a fan of it so far.
Would you guys say that you would like them to kind of follow this or repeat this design concept of explorer area with couple short quests in it?
Yes, I would like to
Absolutely.
see, yeah, because the teleport areas make sense, the distance makes sense, and another thing I noticed is that, like, even though these aren't story quests, a lot of them are like give you prequel kind of like information on like Vaunt. Like the fighting arena is really like it kind of gives you actually more atmosphere to Sharn and the
Sure.
storyline. And so I appreciate that though they're not part of the storyline, that it kind of helps you with the storyline and Sharn, and they're quick, they're easy accessible, and they're actually really fun.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is with the rares. I don't know if the chests drop things that are really useful or not, or if it's just junk loot. But if not, hopefully they have some things in there that are useful upon multiple runs. So that was the only thing.
I don't pay attention. I haven't killed very many rares, but I think they dropped the filigrees, the second
Hopefully they have a chance to drop artifacts or some small chance to
they
drop
don't
loot or
have.
something.
They shouldn't have a chance to drop artifacts because those are, they said, specifically end chests
Oh, okay.
with
You,
artifacts.
that does bring up a one thing in DDO in general. I don't think they put rare named loot in since Epic 3 BC. Like
Yeah,
that, they
that's what
kind
I
of
had
just
on.
abandoned that, and
Did
that's
they?
really
Okay.
sad.
Well, well, I don't think since then they probably only had one other explore area in Ravenloft since then, so there hasn't been too many chances.
On the flip side, and this kind of goes back to an earlier thing we were talking about too, is that from a game management standpoint, I think it's more convenient for players for loot to drop out of an end chest because you know exactly where it is, as opposed to if you're looking for named loot that's in an explorer area chest, you have to find a rare that can be in one of 40 different places. You know, they can move around a lot, so there's some give and take there. I'm not arguing one way or the
Yeah,
other.
and I
Just kind of
wasn't.
pointing it out.
I didn't mean to say like I wouldn't want an exclusive necessarily
Sure.
to the explore area. So I was thinking more of in addition. Maybe have a really small chance to drop something useful. So just something so you have a reason when you're running through explore area to open the chest.
I think
Even
you get
upon your
the
40th
crafting
run.
materials in the filigrees. I
And
think.
Yeah,
yeah,
crafting materials would be good. Yeah.
there's a couple, like, besides the Cerninian weapons, there's some generic like there's a short sword, a Kopesh, that basically has
Mhm.
the same effect that I think they could throw into the rare area as a chance and in the quest.
Sure.
You know, like, because it's basically the same weapon, just different weapon. It's the same effects.
Actually, the weapons, the ones that you can craft, what are they called? Cyrian or
Serenians.
Serenian or something.
Yeah, I think those would be kind of fun to drop in the Cogs quests or in the Cogs Explorer chests. That would be
Yeah,
Rare,
that would be
yeah,
a good compromise, right? Like to give those rares a little bit more meaning and stuff.
sure.
because making them before the patch was ridiculous just to get one energizing
Yeah,
element.
yeah, and we'll talk about the lore. I mostly like the Cogs. My least favorite quests are in the Cogs relative to. I mean, I like roll call is just I don't like roll call. it's a personal. The tubes are just so small and they're very disorienting. Um,
Honestly, if I go in there and I see the right tube open, I call out. The left tube is way quicker than the right.
Fair enough. I haven't really noticed too much either way in that, but the small tubes with all of the orbs that are shooting a bunch of force damage, and I tell you, you turn the corner in that and you run into 3 champions. Good night.
Have you these orbs are outrageous in my opinion, because they do AOE force damage that goes through like walls. Like I got hit in the bottom of a
Yeah,
platform in one quest, and it hit me on top of the They're really OP, and most of my party wipes are because of those things, not because of any other mob.
those are the
It's
force rays.
literally those orbs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll talk about let's hold that off till we talk about monsters a little bit. But yeah, they're a little rough around. Anything else anyone wants to say about the cogs before we start talking about the raid, which I imagine is going to take a little bit longer to talk about?
I can't wait until hipsters move in and kind of like revitalize the area. It could use a little bit more coffee shop.
Yeah, gentrification.
That will help.
Oh boy. Before we start talking about that and gerrymandering or anything crazy like that, let's talk about the raid. So the raid, Too Hot to Handle. I've run it several times, a bunch actually, with some degree of success and some degree of getting our butts burned alive. Because I know this discussion is gonna go. Yeah, let's just go for it. Who wants to jump in about the raid?
Well, I'll start, I guess. I mean, I really
Sure.
enjoy the raid. I think it's a lot of fun. You know, they have the obligatory entry area, so it's not just a, single room raid, but let's be honest, it's a single room raid.
That
Um,
entry area actually has a point.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, well, it's teaching you the mechanics of the
Right.
raid, which I think is, which is helpful. And I do like the mechanics. There's some unique mechanics with the mobs in terms of what they're doing, and this idea that the mobs evolve over time. It's like you're playing, DDO Pokemon or something. And I enjoy that, there's that timing aspect to it. You've got to get these guys early or that they're going to become more difficult. I like that there's puzzles involved. I like that there's traps involved in a unique way. Um, you know, and I really enjoyed it. It's one of those raids where I feel like everybody's got something to do. I felt like with KT, it was really a lot of boss fights, and there was a lot of concern about, oh, there's really nothing for the casters to do in here. And so they ended up going back in and throwing a bunch of trash mobs around, and they were obviously added after the fact, and it felt kind of, you know, uh, just band-aided. But this one, I feel like there's a legitimate role for almost everyone in the party, and there's actually so many things to do that we're actually like, can we get 15 people in here? You know, and there's been other raids in the past where it felt like, well, there's 4 or 5 people really doing most of the work, and everyone else
Sure.
can be kind of standing around. So I like that about the raid.
All right, well, I'll address the elephant in the room, and if you guys have seen my contribution to the show notes, my beef is with the difficulty of the raid. I think they made it a little
Too hard.
more difficult than it needed it to
Sure.
be. So I think the actual devs or somebody who was a dev or somebody who's close to the devs posted this several years ago, and was the philosophy of difficulty, of raid difficulties. And I believe, if I remember correctly, the just the difficulty for normal is basically gauged on whether a regular, normal pug could complete it or not. So just a run of the mill pug, with not necessarily with a bunch of super tunes,
Mhm.
just normal average players who brought together could finish a raid on normal difficulty, and it might be a little bit difficult for them to complete on hard. The hard difficulty was at least now we're going to go, from my opinion, hard difficulty should be a really good pug or a regular guild, maybe not necessarily a raiding guild, but a guild where people know each other and are familiar with their capabilities, and there's a real established leader. Those folks should be able to complete on hard.
Before you go any further, I want to jump in really quick and say, can we kind of all agree that when we're talking about guild, it doesn't nearly need to be a quote guild, but like a group of people who play together consistently. Like I just
Or a
want to define.
channel. Okay, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I should have included a
no,
channel.
you're fine. I just wanted to expand that definition for this conversation because I think
Sure.
it's helpful and for some people that
Okay.
there's people who raid as groups, but they aren't really a guild. So
I feel
please continue.
Arkat kind of covered that when he says a group of people who are familiar with each
Sure.
other's capabilities.
I just wanted to jump in
Um,
and put that out there. But
the elite difficulty. So for hard, a really good pug should not have too much difficulty with hard. Um, and like I said, a regular normal guild or a group of people that raid together should not have too much
Mhm.
trouble with hard. Um, Elite, that now we're talking about your raiding guilds, your lava divers, your omnipresence. And I'm sorry if I don't mean to, not point out some other raiding guilds on some other servers, but those are the ones that I'm familiar with. Um, those guys should be able to complete on elite. They should pretty much always be able to complete on hard. Although I guess, if you have a really, really bad lag spike, there could be some difficulty on hard. But we should reliably be able to complete on elite. With some major difficulties on occasion. And then Reaper.
All bets are off.
If you have a raiding guild with a boatload of people with their wings and a ton of Reaper points, and then R1 should be definitely completable. But what do we have here for this raid? We have a raid where only a few people, only a few groups or a few guilds on any of the servers have completed on normal. I mean, literally, we have maybe 3 or 4 guilds throughout all the servers that have been able to complete on normal.
Cordovan said that they have recorded some hard completions and several normal completions across the server.
Okay, so Omnipresence I think we should all know that Omnipresence on Galanda has completed on hard. I mean, they posted a YouTube video that proves that fact. Now, Nimbin, you said that Cordvan said other groups may have completed on hard, but they haven't posted in the achievements forum, and I haven't seen any other YouTube thing. So right now, I'm suspicious of that claim. Right now, as far as I know, and is that only one complete hard completion has happened. And I get it that we're in the first week and a half of the raid, and certainly we'll need to develop more better tactics, and we'll need to probably re-gear from Sharn. But I got to tell you, okay, so we develop the right tactics and we gear better. Then I can see possibly hard difficulty being completed by end game raiding guilds on a somewhat regular basis. Now, what does that mean for elite and Reaper? Well, maybe we'll get the absolute best guilds occasionally or very, very rarely complete an elite. Maybe. And I just don't see, and Reaper, that's a whole nother issue. I mean, maybe Reaper 1, maybe with all the people with the right number of Reaper points, but it's just just the completions on the upper difficulties are going, comparatively speaking, are going to be very few and very far between.
Assuming they
It
don't
seems
change
like
anything.
exactly. It seems like they shifted. Normal would, if you could do a raid on casual, then you there's no more, pugs will now have to, if there was a casual version of Too Hot to Handle, maybe a pug group could complete that, but it's almost going to be impossible for them to even complete a normal one, and that's just not right. And your raiding guilds, right now may be able to eke out a hard completion. And that's just not right either. And so it's just,
I
I
want
just feel
to
like they overdid it. Is my end point, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point. I want to let other people jump in on this thought, and we can continue talking about the raid but kind of I want to let other people get in here. So I think Axel is chomping at the bit there on that microphone.
I think we need more time as a community to learn the raid. I will say that there was a post going around on the forums from Discord from a developer who said that they completed it 10-man on first life characters on normal.
Sure.
So it seems like to me, and I've only run it once, but I've read tons of raid guides. I've tried to really learn it and study YouTube videos and such. But but take it from a grain of salt because I've only run it once. But it seems like a raid where you have a really low margin of error, and if you do everything right, it's completable with a pug. But if you mess up any little thing, it just goes to hell, like literally. So it's I say give it more time. If people still are not completing it in pugs regularly in a couple months, maybe consider making it more forgivable, at least with the mechanics. Maybe make the dot damage not as high, or maybe give more time for the puzzles, something like that. But yeah, just basically, I think it's still too early. Let's give it a few months.
I tend to agree with that. I think that Arkat's description of the different levels that should be possible makes sense to me, but not necessarily on day one, week one, especially not when they've moved the meta. Um, and you need to build out different characters, need to have different gearing. I think that there should be time for the community to adapt, and I think that the raid should do that. If it's just the same old meta from before and the same old stuff, then to me that's kind of boring. And if you can complete on elite on day one or week one, that's kind of boring. I remember back in the old days when Shroud or Abbott or Todd came out, you weren't completing on elite as a high end rating guild on day one or week one. Some of those raids took a month to get a completion on, even on normal. And I'm not saying we want to go back to that, but there's a middle ground there. I like that this is a challenge. I like that people are having conversations about, hey, how do we gear this? Hey, what's the correct party makeup? Hey, how can we handle these skulls, or how can we handle these trash mobs, or how many tanks do we need? And trying to figure this stuff out. And I think we will. And there's certainly a gear issue as well. A lot of people don't have artifacts fully upgraded yet. A lot of people don't have all the options ready available to them. And once they do, their characters will be more powerful. And Sharn isn't also the last expansion with the last gear. There'll be other stuff coming out later on that might also make things easier. We need to remember this raid doesn't exist as the end point. It's a midpoint of our character's progress. So in order for the raid to have life that's long, or a longevity to it, and not become super easy, it needs to not be completable on high difficulties immediately. That's how I feel anyways.
That was beautifully put. I could not agree anymore.
I think the things for
Yeah, that's a
me
good point.
is like I think everyone's got really good points here. For me, I like the raid mechanics. I think the mechanics are great and how it works. I think though, and I think what Arkat kind of laid down as the baseline of, and that's kind of where I land is normal should. The only thing I'd kind of added to Arkat is if you're like it's a caveat of if you're following the raid mechanics, right? Like if you're trying to just ignore major mechanics of the raid, you should not be completing on normal as a pug, right? Like
Well, and
you
here's
should
the
have to
problem
deal with
also.
those mechanics. But I think the part of it that kind of I think is so my issue is a balance issue. I think the hit points of the mobs need to be worked on so that you can actually reasonably reduce their numbers as opposed to feeling like you have to tank them on normal, hard, and whatever. The thing that I think where I'm off the boat on some of this stuff is when you start talking about we want this to be hard and difficult. Means we have difficulty settings for a reason, right? Like normal needs to be. And I posted actually you had a video recently about do we need an easier setting on raids? My stance on that is firmly no. That's what normal is for. Normal is what you go in and learn the raid on, and for groups that are less geared and not pugs and however you want to define it, normal is the setting for those groups to go in and play the raid and have a reasonable chance at winning if they play the raid right and follow the mechanics and deal with the mechanics. I don't think that Too Hot to Handle is matching that. I don't think it matches that now, and I don't think that's going to change in 4 months, which, by the way, is too long in my opinion to make those adjustments anyways. And I'm all for like raid should be challenging and there should be challenge involved. Yes, but we also have normal, hard, elite, and 10 skulls and Reaper, right? Like there are, and there's a significant difference in this raid between normal and hard, just from the standpoint that one of the mechanics is you need to deal with the trash pretty quickly, and on hard you have this added difficulty automatically of you can't instant kill orange names and you have a death timer. Those two things already make hard way more difficult than normal. So when we're talking about like there needs like raids to be difficult, yes, but we have a scalable difficulty setting. And if pugs aren't able to complete this on normal, then that difficulty setting is off and it's wrong, in my opinion.
Yeah, and pugs are not going to wait 4 months
Right.
because pugs generally are people that either may not be in raiding guilds or may not be in guilds at all, or may not be people who are geared. I guarantee you, if a pug can't complete normal in 4 months, you're going to turn a lot of players off.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that we should make a knee-jerk reaction and make it too easy either. Like I don't have an issue with them. Okay, this raid is 2 weeks old. Fine. Like I'm not saying we need to like rush to make changes to the detriment of the raid, and but I would say that months is too long to make adjustments, and the bar for normal should not ever be, well, the pugs just need to like really be well coordinated, and well, maybe that a little bit, but they need to have XYZ gear and have an artifact fully loaded and a sentient weapon. Like, that is not the baseline for normal. If that's our baseline for normal, then why do we have all these other difficulties for raids? And how do we expect the majority of the population to enjoy that content?
I would
Well
add
said,
that
Patrick.
I would add that there is a problem though with I guess with that in that there is an unscalable aspect to the difficulty of raids. I mean, you either get the mechanics or you don't in a lot of situations. So that can make making normal easy for pugs kind of challenging to do sometimes
I'm
when you
not
get a
saying
raid
making
like
normal
this. Where
easy for pugs.
if
That's not what I'm
no,
saying.
it's yeah, no, and I agree with you guys that it should definitely be normal. Should be very completable by just a normal average group of characters in a pug most of the time. Um, so I'm not. I guess overall, I'm not too worried about it. This issue because I think that developers they have the information. They have the completion percentages. I'm sure they'll adjust it if they need to.
I hope
I
so.
it's okay if I weigh in because I
Go
didn't
for it.
really give my 2 cents. So my guild has a view about it. They don't really like the mechanics. They don't feel like it's going to be easily understandable by a bunch of first timers, which is an issue to our guild leader who does teaching raids. Me, I feel like there's two elements to this raid. I feel like there's mechanics, which includes the puzzles and how the mobs work,
Sure.
and then the mob power level. I feel like the mechanics are just fine. We're gonna figure out. Just like, there's a bunch of raids that if you go in there, it's not intuitive. Von 5 puzzles, the wheels and all that, it should not have been understood in the first run. Like some of that stuff, like I had to learn from veteran players.
Mhm.
But I feel like um, the fact that you need crazy amount of attentive DPS and heals in normal is kind of outrageous. Like I like the mechanics personally. I feel like I totally agree with you, Patrick, that the power level of things on normal is a little outrageous. But the fact that the meta has just changed slightly to the right, where we're getting 22 stat items rather than having 19 stat items, unless we get a raid item with a 20 stat. There's all these new things. There's freshly new craft system where you can put stats and insightful stats on nearly finished or almost there items. We're not geared up yet for the current meta. The mechanics are very hard to understand for those people who are reading the recording of the mechanics. A lot of our guild people are still asking questions after watching and reading some of the outputs. Our first time in was R1. Coca Majova was there, and he gave us hints and clues. We could not do it. We went in on normal, could not do it. Got a lag spike on our third run. I love it personally. Love it. High Lords hates it. And that's my 2 cents on the raid.
I like the distinction you made, and which is one that I was trying to make too. Is like the balance, the mechanics of the raid. Like, I like that aspect of it. I think just the two things I think that are most obvious to me that need to change are maybe three things: is reduce the mob hit points, tone the damage down a bit, and maybe tweak the progression between Forge race, the 3 phases of Forge race, and I think you've got a really solid raid.
Yeah, I totally
I'm-
agree with you guys about scaling with difficulty. Like, I don't think you're supposed to need 12 filigrees and the max fire absorption to do a normal raid. That makes no sense. Like when, back when normal and elite was a thing and no Reaper, I used to red alert elite dungeons just fine and got completions. So like going from that to not even, I literally dropped down the hole in R1. I have 98 Reaper points. I dropped down the hole, ran up to I was the tank, freaking PR, AC, all of it up as high as I can in the 400s. Walked up to the first group of mobs, died like that. And Kokomo Jobo wrote in our stream chat, "You got further than I thought you would on R1." And that was just crazy.
Sure. And I'm all for, like, you need to learn the raid, you need to learn the mechanics. A first time completion on R1 sure is not. And I'm a person who really likes figuring out mechanics of raids. When Baba came out, like, when we figured out how the mound mechanics worked, like, that was a really cool moment for us, right? So, like, mechanics, figuring this out, first time runs, people not understanding, like, if that's why you're failing, that's fine. When you understand the mechanic, and this raid doesn't, there may be mechanics that I'm not aware of at this point, but it seems like it's a pretty simple raid, right? There doesn't seem to be a lot of hidden mechanics or things to figure out so much of that
I
I
feel
think we're
like
missing.
they're using a panic psychology trend in the last 3 raids. If you notice an RSO and killing time and this raid, there's a lot of flat damage that's constantly ticking at certain points,
Sure.
and that causes panic with a lot of normal people who are just used to just taking damage when hit. But taking damage upon area causes a panic effect to a normal person who's not paying attention to their what's going on emotionally and outside stimuli. You know what I mean? So like for me, when I saw that, I'm like, okay, I'm just taking damage and I need to get this done. I feel like a lot of regular people are going to start freaking out, hopping into a group of mobs, maybe trying to jump, like, where do I need to, there has to be a spot I can jump into to get, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like the constant damage thing is really smart on their part, but it really messes with a lot of players' heads.
Sure. Anyone want to say anything else about the raid before we wrap this section up and move on to the next? Okay. Like I said, I think the mechanics are great. I almost don't want to call them puzzles personally, but I like how they work. I think it's a nice touch and everything works really well. So just
I kind
gotta figure
of
out the numbers.
I kind of like how you walk in the raid and the NPCs have more to say about the mobs than the machine that you're fixing for them that they created. They're like, "Oh, we built this machine; it's going haywire. You figured that out." But the mobs we don't know about, we know everything.
Sure. Right. So thanks for joining us this week. We will continue our discussion on Masterminds of Sharn review next week. Thank you to my guests today. Don't forget to check out Axel's YouTube channel. Nimvin also has a YouTube channel, and the High Lords of Malkir do teaching raids. Although I think by the time this airs, it gets published, you guys may be done with teaching raids for the year. I think it usually runs from January to June-ish.
Yeah, tonight we're doing Baba and Strahd, I believe.
Yeah. So don't forget to check them out as well. If you'd like to support the show, you can visit our website, DDOCast.com, or you can support us on Patreon. You can also find show notes, past shows, and more on our website. You can also find us on social media at DDOCast on Twitter. It's the best place. If you'd like to join the discussion, you can leave a comment or email us, DDOCast@gmail.com. Until next time, may all your attack rolls be crits, all your chest level appropriate, have fun, and don't forget to gather for buffs.